This month, we officially kicked off football season like the rest of America. We celebrated by reflecting on the love stories of two legends from the sport, Deion Sanders and Walter Payton. Now, Deion, or Coach Prime, had over 9 million people watching a college football game for some, like myself, in the middle of the night. And most of us remember, of course, his marriage to Pilar, but surely, what did you know about his first wife or even his current engagement to Tracy Edmonds? And then Walter Payton was known for his Hall of Fame worthy skills as a running back for the Chicago Bears. Now, some were aware of his marriage to Connie, but it seems like a lot of y'all didn't really know the dynamics of their marriage, allegedly. So between those two episodes, plus an introduction to our real life, real love series where we're highlighting modern love stories as well, we had a very, very full month. So it's time for us to discuss all of that and more on this month's I'll Tell You Too. So if you don't know what I'll Tell You Too is, basically, on the last Monday of every month, I'll Tell You What will provide context to a comment or a question that y'all have left on the recent love stories we've reflected on, or even I'll Tell You What as a whole. That is what today's episode is all about. But before we dive into that, hey, if you're new in the pews, I'll Tell You What is a weekly podcast that shares the weddings, marriages, and romances of Black figures throughout time. We bask on these relationships not to be messy, but to remind you of the passion in our past and to humanize the people we put on pedestals. Basically, it's all love, Black history. And I am Ashley, your favorite raconteuse that tells you these stories every single Monday. Welcome to the 19th episode of I'll Tell You What. All right? So let's get into it. Now this comment about Deion Sanders and Tracy Edmonds' long engagement. I think there could be some truth to what you're saying, but also they've both been through marriages that ended in chaotic divorces or endings before. So I think it's them wanting to remain committed to each other, hence getting engaged, but marriage may not really change much, so that's why they're not in a rush. I mean, I read something in 2019 where he said that when the time comes for them to get married, they'll likely have an intimate and very small affair. Deion said, quote, "We've done that. Both of us have done that, been there, done that. I wouldn't give a darn if it's just me, her, and Pastor Omar. Then we straight." So who knows when or if they'll marry, but if their relationship works for them, then you know what? I absolutely love it. Now, Buddy Up asked about Deion's kids, and I'm assuming kind of what are they up to? Now, you've probably seen the KFC commercials with them all, including his mom, but beyond Shiloh and Shadur, you might not realize what the rest of his kids are up to. So let's start with his oldest, Deandra. She works in communications and client relations and is an influencer with a YouTube channel. Now, Deion Jr. is the one behind all of the social media and content you see around his father's brand. He's also behind a media company called Well Off. And of course, you've seen Shiloh and Shadur. Shiloh is a college student at the University of Colorado and is a safety on the football team that's coached by his father. And Shadur also goes to Colorado and is the starting quarterback for the team. Now, his youngest that he calls Bossy is Shalamai, and she also goes to Colorado too. She's actually a member of the women's basketball team. And playfully, he likes to rank his children because it's basically an inside joke amongst the family. But of course, everybody else is now privy to this. Did y'all know any of that? So of course, because we were talking about Deion Sanders, so many people got upset and left comments. Like, people on Instagram were upset because we were talking about the wedding details of Deion and Pilar's wedding, which literally, why is that offensive? But then others were upset on TikTok, of course, because they're upset on TikTok about everything. And they're like, why are we talking about this? This is old news. He's with Tracy, blah, 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 right? People that don't know what we're doing here. But let me tell y'all something. The aisle runners held it down. The aisle runners checked them, and I honestly loved every single moment from it. Like, y'all keep saying I shouldn't have to explain myself, and you know what? You're right. I try to realize that some people haven't seen these videos before, so they may be a little bit confused, but I'm no longer going to be in the comments explaining the same thing over and over anymore, and that includes everything from the mark on my face to literally things that were obviously explained in the video that you just watched. So, saying all that to say, thank you, thank you, thank you. Please keep doing that because I'm not explaining myself anymore. All right, something else I want to address, which was this very interesting comment from Wanda, who wanted us to not reflect on Deion's life or love story, but getting out to vote. Which, why do we do this? Why do we assume that people cannot do more than one thing at once? But also, where in this video could I have encouraged anyone to vote where probably the majority of the country is not in a place where they had an active election? I'm based in Georgia, and the time for us to start voting won't be until next spring. So I will say, though, if it is time for you, respective person that is watching this video, if it is time for you to vote in your respective area, I hope you research the candidates and exercise your American right to vote. Let's move on. So I knew that the love story of Walter Payton would be a sensitive topic for some. But you know what? Natalie's comment is how I think many feel about him. Quote, he wasn't perfect, but he did a lot of good. That's very true, because week after week, we learn about the humanity of some of our favorite people through their interpersonal romantic relationships. Walter Payton had a soft spot for so many people and used his celebrity to do a lot of good. Now, for some of you, his love story doesn't take away from all the good things he did throughout his life. And for others, maybe you see him differently, but ultimately he was still a humanitarian. So tell me, what do you think? Now, Gwendolyn wanted to know more about Walter Payton's life outside of his love story. So let me tell you, I learned a few things doing my research about him, and I'll share some of that with you. He grew up in Columbia, Mississippi with his mom, dad, brother, and sister. When he was in high school, schools were forced to integrate, and while other Black students were more vocal about this because it impacted not only how they were going to school, but their extracurriculars too, like the football team, Walter remained silent. Rather, he didn't share his opinion with a lot of people. He followed his brother to Jackson State, and he was also offered a scholarship to Kansas State, but was wooed by the Jackson State coach to go there. He was a star in college, and the entire school tried campaigning for him to be a Heisman candidate, but coming from an HBCU in the 1970s, there was just a very low chance of success for him to win, which he obviously didn't. But if I remember reading correctly, he was either like 7th place, 8th place, or 11th place, like somewhere in there. He also wanted to be drafted by the Dallas Cowboys and was upset to go to the Chicago Bears initially. He owned a few businesses while he was in Chicago, and most were actually unsuccessful. He had a manufacturing or construction company or something like that, if I remember correctly, and several clubs. Now, there's a lot more to his story that I don't have the time to share with you. I would highly encourage you to read Sweetness, The Enigmatic Life of Walter Payton by Jeff Pearlman. This was a healthy-sized book, over 400 pages, but it was a really detailed look at his life with the interviews from the people that knew him best, including his children. You can also read his autobiography, Never Die Easy, and Payton by Connie Jarrett and Brittany Payton. So we also got this question from Swaz Swoopada Swoopable 9915 and Trinity Gal 89 on the episode about Walter Payton. They both wanted to know what happened to Walter's son from his affair in the 1980s, allegedly. So according to his unofficial biography that was written by Jeff Pearlman, Nigel got in contact with Walter's mom and sister, and they met, and he was loved on by his family, so hopefully that relationship formed and continued. But I don't believe he had a relationship with his half-siblings, and not much else is known about him intentionally. His life was mostly under the radar. He was raised by his mom and stepfather. We don't really know much, but I hope that wherever he is, he's at peace and content. So in the stories the other day, someone, and I can't remember who this was, so my bad, asked what love story took the longest time to research. That is a great question. I'll say there were two that were tied, probably Marvin Gaye and Walter Payton's love stories. Now Marvin Gaye took a minute because I read 2 books plus combed over a lot of research, and I condensed that in like a 8 to 9 day window. Walter Payton's love story took about 2.5 weeks, partially because the biography was huge. Another part was because I was also researching Deion Sanders' love story at the same time. So usually for me, it takes about 4 to 5 days to read and do research, and then less than a day of script writing and less than a day of editing. And now with football season being back, it's condensed my timeline. But you know what? I enjoy it because I'm learning a lot about people that I probably wouldn't have known otherwise. But also, this is bringing me back to something I really enjoyed while growing up, which is reading. So thank y'all. Now, a few of you, including Ronnie, want me to cover your love stories as well. I love that. And I'm really honored that you would want me to tell your stories. Now, we have the opportunity to share the love stories of Sierra and Marquise and Jasmine and Jonathan on our Real Life, Real Love series. If you want your love story shared, definitely email me. But know that once we launch the Patreon, those all runners will get first dibs. But seriously, I do want to continue to tell more of your stories. So if you are interested, definitely hit me up for more information. And that, my good I'll Runner friends, that wraps up this month's I'll Tell You Too. So tell me, what did you think? Did my explanations make sense? Did you have any additional questions or comments? Please let me know. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, and leave a podcast review even if you watch the episodes. And also, you can head to the links in the notes below or the link in the bio if you're listening. If you want to support the show by grabbing some merch or donating a coin or two, thank you if you do. Don't forget, we will be continuing our love stories of our favorite football players and coaches through the month of October. So the person we will be discussing next week is a Super Bowl winning wide receiver. Any guesses? See you in the views.